Welcome to the Everyday Conversion Podcast, the only 5-day-a-week podcast helping faithful members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints have and foster daily gospel discussions with their families based on the Come Follow Me curriculum. I'm your host, Mark Sieverkrop, and it's important for me to tell you up front that the views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts of this podcast alone and do not represent the official doctrine and viewpoint of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. With that in mind, let's jump right in with today's episode. General conference we just had this weekend. And before we get into anything else, I want to talk about the big announcement. Oh wait, that's right. There wasn't any big major changes or announcements during conference. So that's the first thing I want to talk about today is the fact that it's funny, listen on Twitter, if you've looked on Twitter or anywhere else, there was tons of rumors about fast and testimony meeting being changed, or coffee being changed in the Word of Wisdom, which makes me laugh. I don't know why anybody thought that, but there was no big announcements. As a matter of fact, one of the guys that I follow on Twitter, at LDS Bishop, made the comment, and I thought this was perfect. After conference finished, he said, "The big announcement from General Conference is that God loves you and that the atonement of Jesus Christ is infinite and personal to you." Then another guy responded and said, and this is the state clerk, who's one of my favorite people to follow. If you're on Twitter, I highly recommend following him. He's funny, and he's a faithful member. He said his response to that was, "Which is the biggest announcement we can receive, and many will be mad there wasn't more." But that was one of the big things that I got, the atonement. The themes that I got from conference this weekend was the importance of spiritual preparation. President Nelson said time is running out. Many speakers talked about repentance or developing, exercising your spiritual gifts, or all of these different things that relate to that. So the two themes that I got was that spiritual preparation, the importance of preparing, the sense that things are moving quicker and that we need to do more, which makes sense with the Come Follow Me curriculum and everything else the church is doing. The other one I got was this idea of reaching out to those that have, for whatever reason, aren't as close to the church as they used to be, whether that's from their choices, or it's just falling away just because of life or whatever it is. Just that idea of reaching out to them and inviting them to return. Those are the main things that I got. So there's a lot to learn. I know for me, I was able to listen to most of conference. There was a little bit I missed because I was out of town with my son, and we were trying to listen in the car, but we lost service a few times. So there's some things I need to go back and re-listen to. But even if I had watched all of it, it's so important that we go back and we reread and re-listen to those talks. You may have noticed in the Come Follow Me booklet for this year that they give you 2 weeks. There's 2 weeks for last week and this week. And the idea of that is that we spend more time studying General Conference and the lessons and the talks from General Conference. So I encourage you to do that. There's a few ways to study, and that's what I want to talk about today was ways that we can implement Come Follow Me. Or not Come Follow Me. Well, Come Follow Me too, but ways that we can implement the things that we learn from General Conference. Because if we just listen to General Conference and it finishes at, for me, 3 p.m. on Sunday afternoon, and we sit back and we say, "Wow, that was amazing," and we'll listen again in 6 months, we've missed the point. There's so much to learn. There's so much to get from there. What a blessing it is that we have prophets and apostles that so readily speak to us today, that we can listen to any time we want, that we can pull up, these talks and listen to them. What an amazing opportunity it is. We have more access to prophets and apostles in our day than people ever have in the history of the world. We can have it in our pockets with our phones. We have the Ensign. We have the church websites. We have Mormon channel. There's all of these ways that we can listen to a prophet every single day. So how are we doing that? How are we doing that with our family? So here's a couple thoughts, things that you may not know are available, because I know I didn't. There's one of these that I just found out as I was preparing for this lesson or for this episode. But the first one is the church puts all of the talks in a podcast feed. And your favorite podcast listener, which you're listening to a podcast now, so you obviously listen to podcasts. If you look for General Conference, I think it's just called General Conference, from the church. I know for sure on iTunes they have it, and they put all of the talks. You can download the entire session, so you can listen to the music too if you want, or you can just download the talks. I do that. That's one of the things I do. I download them all to my phone, and I listen to them as I'm going about my day in the coming weeks. I don't know if they're up yet. I haven't looked yet, but in the next few days, they certainly will be. You can also find them the videos are available right now on churchofjesuschrist.org, and you can find them there. The next thing is you can study them by topic. Now, this is something I had seen, but I'd never really looked at. So if you go to either churchofjesuschrist.org and you look in the General Conference section, once you click on General Conference, in the top right corner, there's conferences, speakers, and topics. If you click on topics, it gives you all of the topics, all topics that have been talked about in General Conference. And it tells you how many talks are available. So like, for example, I'm there right now. If we go to A and we go to atonement, it says parentheses 254. So there's 254 talks that talk about atonement. And you look here, and it starts with the newest, and it just goes down, and it gives you all the talks that mention that. So there's, let's see, 2 from October, Elder Holland's The Ministry of Reconciliation, and President Nelson's The Correct Name of the Church. It just goes through. So that is an amazing way to study and use General Conferences, using that topic section. And it's also available in the LDS or the Gospel Library app. You can do the same thing. You can click on topics and study them that way. So that's the other way. So we have podcast feed, we have by topic, and the third way is there's a page, and I'm going to link to it in the show notes, that I found at the bottom of, if you go to General Conference on the website, and you go all the way to the bottom, it says additional resources. There's a link that says ideas for studying. And I had never seen this before. I didn't know this was here. But it gives you ideas for personal study for conference. And it gives you ideas for family study from conference. And just to give you an idea, like for personal study, it says listen to the Spirit, ask questions and look for answers, record your impressions, liken it to your own experiences, look up references, look for, and there's things that it tells you can look for. When you study General Conference talks, you can look for Jesus Christ, look for inspiring words and phrases, look for principles and doctrine, and so on. Same with ideas for family study. It says ask questions, learn quotes, study topics and speakers. And it mentions that, study by topic that we were talking about. So there's some really, really good ones there. So I'm going to put that in the show notes, a link to that, so that you can get to that as well. So my question to you today, or my questions are, I mentioned that my themes were spiritual preparation, the importance of it, and reaching out to those that were lost. So what question did you hear from listening to General Conference, or what theme did you hear from General Conference? And the second question is, what is one thing you plan to do as a result of something you heard during conference? So my encouragement to you this week is to think about those two things, but then make a plan to review the conference talks personally and as a family. Talk with your family. Take family home evening to discuss how you guys are going to study General Conference. How are you going to review the talks? How are you going to make sure that you apply the things that you're learning? How are you going to really dig into the things that are taught? So that it's not just a once every 6 months thing, but we continue to learn from these General Conference talks for the next several months. So again, those questions: what theme did you hear from conference? And what is one thing that you are going to do as a result of something you heard from General Conference? Thank you for listening to the Everyday Conversion Podcast.
For transcripts and other bonus materials, as well as past episodes, be sure to visit everydayconversion.com. And if you haven't yet, be sure to leave us a rating and review on iTunes or your favorite podcast listening platform. This episode was a production of the Everyday Conversion Podcast, and while we are faithful members of the church, the views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts of this podcast alone and do not represent the official doctrine and viewpoint of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. For official doctrine and viewpoints of the church, please visit lds.org.